Welcome back to Modern Slaves and Mind Games with your host, the one and only, hopefully the one and only. If there's anybody else that seems to be mimicking our style over here, I hope you alert the wizard so we can handle that accordingly. But I'm trying to find a name to call us. I don't want to call us like the Disanites or something. That sounds very narcissistic cult. But I want to find a name that encapsulates our rebel alien kind of non-traditional nature. So right now I'm just going to say, and again, this isn't like any satanic worship or anything like that. We're still just, regular human beings. But for the sake of the conversations that we have on this page, and especially as it pertains to the world that we live in, you guys I'm going to refer to as the wizards and the witches of the Dark Wizard's Dungeon. Mind you, those are not exclusively to dudes and chicks in our community. That's to whatever energy you present yourself as in your human body. I understand that biologically you've presented yourself in one way, and energetically you may present yourself in a way that doesn't correlate with our traditional heteronormative standards. So hopefully you can find out which one of those titles you fall under, and you feel part of this community of consciousness that we're building, and you feel that you have an opportunity to contribute with your unique perspective and ideas and experience and insight to this community and this culture that we're building. It's a privilege, truly an honor to have you here. And I'm very, very thankful that you have decided to show up as early as you have in this movement of Black consciousness that we are maybe not starting, because again, it's definitely attempts have been made at doing that. But I want to look at this as more of a contribution to the greater world, not just for the sake of giving Black people power, not just for the sake of giving an individual group power, because I understand that that will always lead to, at some point, some supremacist psychosis, but allowing us to find the immense, the deep, the infinite power that exists within all of us, and knowing how important it is for us to respect that in one another to be able to have access to the truth of that within ourselves. And to know that we don't need to take from one another to give to ourselves, to feel more than how little we truly feel within ourselves. We don't need to mask anymore. We don't need to hide that truth that we live with. It's a time in reality. It's a time in existence to truly live true to your soul, live in alignment with who you believe you really are, and allow the world to reflect experiences and opportunities and accommodations to support the livelihood of that. On a very sad, I apologize, drop some tears for me. Very sad note, I have fallen victim to Dream Chaser's insanity. The one that I preach of on my page. This isn't just a propaganda that I'm sharing to sell anything. This is literally a psychosis that I've fallen under, and it has opened me up my eyes to the reality that my dreams are possible if I'm willing to put everything that I am into making them happen. And really beyond dreams, but just crafting the life that I want to live, becoming the person that I want to be. It all takes true investment and intention. And I genuinely believe that it would be a disservice, not only to you guys as my community members, but to myself and the inner child that I continue to give life to and to care for within myself every day, to not be this vulnerable and share my real perspectives, my real truths, my real analysis of this world we live in. To give the people who genuinely care on the levels like I believe I do an opportunity to commune here, to participate in creating this consciousness, creating this culture, and giving future generations, even just giving ourselves that we live right now, an opportunity to take the steps forwards that we need to creating the reality that we want to live in. It's got to do more than just escaping the matrix. And I understand I call this podcast Modern Slaves and Mind Games, but it's so much more than just being able to free your own mind. It's being able to recognize your infinite nature in this very limited reality, and being able to see how much we as a people can release ourselves from our own limitations to connect with each other, to tap into that infinity. Not how much can we take from one another to destroy this reality and inevitably self-destruct to restart because we couldn't take responsibility as we were supposed to. Before I make this intro another 45-minute one, because we have about 3.5 hours to get into, I'm assuming, I just want to let you guys know that there's some things in this life that we don't choose to do. Some things in this life we're called to do, and that calling will haunt us day and night until we answer it and allow ourselves and who we are to be a consequence of following that. Now, there's this super old unreleased Kendrick Lamar song. I don't know what the name is. Maybe I'll add it to the end of this. But there's this really old Kendrick Lamar song, and he says something to the effect of somebody having a calling so grand that it caused them to sedate themselves throughout their lives as a means of avoiding the responsibility, the overwhelming responsibility that came with following that calling. So I hope for every single person that receives this information, this consciousness that I'm giving, I hope you realize that I never chose to necessarily be this podcaster, or I never chose to be a media personality, or really chose to do so many of these things that I'm doing on this more modern, more recent side of my life. These are things that I feel genuinely I wake up and the inspiration is internal to create. The inspiration is coming from within, from inside the house, to create this lifestyle and to live through it, not just to dream about it and then to sedate it by going and doing things with other people who also are abandoning their dreams or living a life that I genuinely hate. Even if it comes with all of the validation, the acceptance that I know I need so much right now, but I'm willing to sacrifice for the life that I want, whenever that may come. So I guess what I'm saying with this short story is that when you really feel called to do something, the only thing that you're choosing to do beyond that is not following the calling. Because at the end of the day, you've already been exposed to the inspiration, you've been exposed to the lifestyle, you've been exposed to the smells, the vision, the whatever it is. Now you can't take it out of your sight, out of your awareness. Now you have to do something with it, about it, or sedate it. But something in you from inside the house resonated with it and is now calling you to pursue this journey for whatever it may be. But remember, the reason why we're following calling more than choice is because when we follow this calling, we're going to have to surrender our ability to control the circumstances, which is the leisure that choice gives us. The ability to choose what's in front of us, because we can choose as a means of protecting our own insecurity, not knowing that we're supposed to choose or go through what's scary, because that is going to overwhelm us so much to release that control, that strict constriction that we have over our lives, and give us an opportunity to recognize we are actually a lot more powerful than we allowed ourselves to believe. So how is all of this wrapping itself up to make sense? I, as a young black neurodivergent, I don't even want to say neurodivergent, I'm pretty sure that term is eugenicist, eugenicistic, if that's a word. But I'll call myself autistic until we find a black person who actually discovered autism, and then I'll call myself after that person's name. There are so few role models that we have, especially in American society, because so many of our leaders are basically just like figureheads as a means of exploiting our ignorance or our desire to hate ourselves and our community. So that has all allowed me to recognize that I'm not necessarily desiring to be any kind of savior or any kind of leader, really, to people, because our society is full of a bunch of adult children who don't want to listen to anybody except their own carnal desires, and then wonder why the world is the way the world is. But I'm hoping if you do deem me credible of offering you advice, you take that voice that's inside your head, and I'm not just saying the voice that's telling you to go punch a hole in the wall. I'm saying that voice that's inside your head, that every time you hear a song, it wants to dance. Every time you see a movie, you want to write a script. Every time you go into the world and you exist in nature, you heal and you grow. Give space to that voice. Give a chance for that voice to live, to grow, and feed it. And allow it to carry you into experiences, into opportunities, into relationships and connections that will only amplify the love and the discovery that you're taking upon yourself. And may we allow that pure intention and passion for just life to allow it to guide us through these mind games that are attempting to turn us into modern slaves. And hopefully we could be the free rebel souls that inspire the world to be everything more than it ever was supposed to be. Of course, it's going to start with these conversations and hopefully changing the lives of the people who are able to receive them. So thank you for being here again, and thank you for listening to my intro rant, because I'm definitely going to be giving one of these every episode. So hopefully you do appreciate them. But this reality that we live in is getting so messed up and blown up and torn apart because we, the poors, are not supposed to realize that during these shifts of reality, there's an opportunity to create the plans to not only become anything you want to be, but to set the foundation for legacies that can last multiple generations. And a certain group of people is only wanting one type of person, one demographic of person to have access to that power in this current state of reality, because I'm almost sure this may be one of the only times in our current state of human history and human existence that we'll be able to exact that in the level of democratically dispersed or allocated power that it exists in. But we're going to explain all of that as we get into this long episode. So hopefully you guys are ready for that. Get your snacks, get your smokes, get you a baddie, or get you a hottie. I don't know, whatever you like. And get ready to enjoy this episode because we're about to tear the mind up. But before we do that, I feel like we're missing something. Now I'd like to get into a message from our sponsors. Do you feel like a loser? Don't. Purchase some merch from Cosmic Nomads Rebel Souls.shop today. And make sure you hurry in time before we conclude our Black History Month sale, where you can get 25% off your entire order at checkout. And if that doesn't sound enticing enough, how about adding an extra 10% off when you sign up with your email and SMS to the pop-up subscription once you hit the website? Can't wait to see what you pick up. Cosmic Nomads Rebel Souls, life inspired by love, passion born from pain. Rebel Souls, live forever. All right, now the show that you guys have been waiting for. We're going to discuss a whole hell of a lot in this episode, so hopefully you guys are ready. Let's just get into it right now because I'm going to go into a 10-minute tangent if I don't. But the foundation of this episode, because I understand that there's already so many amazing hit pieces on Project 2025 and everything that the conservative party, you can't even call it the conservative party, the entire United States government at this point is doing. Just it's right or center right, or they say they're on the left, but they're lying because they're waiting to find a reason to justify why they made a transition from wearing blue hair to now having a red hat on top of that blue hair. But the foundation of this conversation we're going to have is going to be a pretty existential one. So I want you guys to open up your mind from, instead of just thinking about paying your bills tomorrow or how long it's been since you've had sex, I need you to think about the next 50 years and the people who are creating systems, 700-page documents concerning taking out, destroying or dismantling the federal government in about 180 days of a 4-year term, which I promise you will not be the last. Yeah, this is a 50 to 100-year plan. And mind you, I could even bet that Project 2025 is a means of ending the future for anybody who is dissenting to that leading government body. Mind you, your livelihood in this reality as it pertains to existing beneath their hand will be you live on our time or you don't. We're going to have a conversation about how society time is all manufactured to enslave the progression and the proper development of non-colonial human beings and indigenous people, but that's going to be a YouTube video because there's visual I need to include in that. But again, so we don't get too far into a bunch of stuff. This is an existential conversation that we're having about more than just this generation. And it's more than about even the next 3 generations. It's quite literally about everybody who is breathing and living today, the future of their existence. That is a whole lot of people and a whole lot of generations. But a couple of important things that are happening in this time are not only the very weak and already, I want to bring up that there's going to be a dismantling of America that we'll discuss in here, but I'm not going to tell you right now, America is already very, very, very weak and destabilized as it pertains to the debt that we owe damn near everybody as a means of supporting our existence. And then hoping that we could tie them in this bind of, hey, well, you have to depend on using our dollar, so we're just going to print money and you're going to not basically hound us for owing you real wealth or real resource. The two biggest things economically that are going to happen over the next 25 to 50 years, we can even say that the next 5 years are setting us up for this. The boomer wealth transfer, which will transfer trillions of dollars of wealth from the boomer class of America downward to millennials and Gen Z. Mind you, this is, again, you have to take into account how many of these trillions are held within families, like oil families and whatnot, of just like business moguls and industry leaders that are holding billions upon billions of dollars. Billions upon billions of dollars. So it's not necessarily a matter of, oh, there's all this widespread money hanging around and we just have to find a way to funnel it down. It's almost a matter of we've hoarded up all this money beneath a private entity that is this human being. And now that human being, based on their sociopathic lack of emotions and empathy for anybody except their own carnal desires, not even themselves, they have to decide, like, I'm going to spend this hundreds of billions of dollars on saving the humanity that I stole all this money from through some kind of legalized scam that was never revealed until well after I was already able to hold on to all the money that I just laundered. But again, to the conversation we're trying to have, the importance is the trillions of dollars that is being funneled down through the wealth transfer. Okay? Mind you, we started this specific part of the conversation saying that America is significantly deep in debt and there is no natural resource to leverage to lead us into the future, because we were using the dollar to protect us, or the whole entire world, genuinely from seeing that we have no natural resource. And in that time since leveraging the dollar, globalizing the dollar, we've been able to sell off our blue collar workers. We've been able to destroy parts of the federal government that probably could be used to appreciate our community and create our culture. We've exploited the culture that we did have the opportunity to exploit by not investing in American arts and American culture, but only giving money to STEM just to put ourselves in a position to realize that all these STEM grads and whatnot and computer science grads are competing against each other for jobs that won't exist, because it's going to be 9-year-olds from India. Mind you, this isn't a means of being racist. This is a means of just these people are preparing their children way better than American people are. 9-year-old children from India and Asia will be able to pick their people up and come to America and properly integrate themselves into systems while also being able to take a very low amount of pay, but being able to work for decades and grow into these systems, into the American system. Mind you, that's not even the problem. The real problem is that all of these like basic labor positions are being mollywopped out by artificial intelligence anyway. And if you think that billionaires who already don't want to pay you money for healthcare, for vacation, and also hate labor unions, if you think that they're not just going to pay $20,000 a year 10 times over to have agents that can do as much work as 100 human employees, and absolutely no threat of somebody pulling in a social movement against you to cancel culture you, you think that these people aren't going to choose the robot over the human being who may start a movement over destroying their reputation? Like, you have to be an absolute idiot to answer that question incorrectly. It's not me calling you that, but this is you having to look in the mirror and ask yourself why you answered that incorrectly, knowing what we already have established to this point. So you guys are keen to all the things happening, like dehumanizing legislation going on in America. It's not even necessarily to punish people more than it is for the sake of leveraging or mainstreaming who has access to and who can receive the trickle-down effects of this wealth transfer. One, it's to remove anybody who would allow a dissenting opinion to the fact that wealthy people are going to leverage this wealth transfer as a means of owning all of society. Okay, think about this. You privatize all of society. So then basically everybody has to pay for everything, and there's no federal government regulations, meaning that wealthy people can just turn everything into a business, and then all of that money that does get inherited or transferred down is just funneled right back into the businesses that are these owned by these wealthy people, instead of being able to be protected by the federal government through regulations, or at least invested in to support local communities now that that money has come out of the grip of these dead fucking boomers and can be allowed to be invested in the communities that these boomers were destabilizing. And really not even destabilizing, but depleting through this illusion of a white picket fence suburbia that's not even a real community. It's just another cult of identity, because it makes people feel like they're better than other people because other people are homeless or live in apartments. It's so much of our culture. If it's not just pure social performance for validation, it's the illusion of I'm okay, but I'm not okay. I'm just better than the next person. Not knowing that if I don't care about the next person and I'm using their lack of well-being to support my acceptance of my well-being, at some point I'll be in their position and there's going to be nobody to help me because I refuse to help them. But that's more of like the wealth coming in from the back end. I want to describe, in addition to that, wealth coming in from the back end, real wealth. I want to describe the future of wealth that we're basically selling our entire country into as a means of, and again, as an intellectual person, when I get confused over certain topics, it's more times than not I can tell the whole thing's a lie. But the thing that scares me the most is that knowing it's a lie, but not knowing the extent of the lie, and even worse than that, not knowing the implications and the consequences of that lie and who that has on the masses of people who will inevitably be impacted by it for not knowing what the lie was and believing it so hard, but now being shifted into a reality where they're being faced with a truth that they're unprepared to address. So what is this that I'm describing, this futuristic wealth or illusion of wealth potential that I'm describing that will connect both of our worlds together? The old money and the new money. It's going to be the artificial intelligence and the crypto revolution. Mind you, I keep on saying mind you because I want you guys to genuinely know, as an average American person, this might be the absolute worst time in human history for you. Like there is no hiding in your little neighborhood. There's going to be no there's literally going to be no dissent. Like we as Americans make decisions together for the sake of the oligarchy, and then the poor face the consequences of those poor decisions because those decisions were made to do nothing but serve the pockets of people who already have wealth. They just want to own, like they just want power over people who are so powerless that they think wealth is going to be the thing that saves them from their suffering, instead of maybe not being in such a disadvantageous state of existence, seeking validation, which literally is the worst form of compensation in a world where you're giving your actual time, space, and energy for the sake of somebody else, a choice that somebody else can make and take away at will. At will. There is literally no greater validation, or there is no greater validation than self-acceptance. There's no greater validation than self-acceptance, because your whole entire life is on the other side of your ability to do that or not to do that. Whatever decision you make, your whole entire life's on the other side of that. But I'll do a whole entire podcast episode on this because this needs its own full explanation. But just in short, as it pertains to this conversation that we're having today, I believe that this is a huge, and not even just an American one, because if we can even just take the Argentinian, is that what they call you guys? Argentinians? The government of Argentina, the president, again, wow, I need to start getting better on my global affairs. But whatever your scammy leader is, ended up pulling the craziest rug pull on the people of Argentina. And that's literally the best case scenario as to what can happen with the crypto scam as to this point, because there is no digital reality or digital resource that can be used to back this type of currency or these types of transactions. It's literally just a game made up by tech bros that is being validated by poor people putting in their real money into hoping that they're going to get rich, but they never will, because the game will forever be owned by people who literally scam other people to get rich and to have money themselves. In short, the whole entire crypto thing, until further notice, is completely a scam, and it's a means of rug pulling everyday American poor people it's exploiting the hopelessness that everyday poor people have in America, because bills are already expensive, housing is already fucked, nobody has a good relationship, people are struggling to find jobs, all of this nastiness is already happening. These people need to gamble, like they need to hit a parlay. And now I'm starting to realize maybe this is why gambling culture has been so influenced as of late, especially as we're integrating ourselves into crypto reality and leveraging crypto when absolutely nobody has said that this is like a viable source of transaction and trading. Because poor people are going to have to parlay their medical debt, their housing debt, their financial trauma that came from getting a divorce, child support. They're going to have to literally parlay all of their debts onto hoping that this crypto meme coin is going to turn around and flip them $100 million, and because they're the first ones that got it before the rug, and then now they're going to be able to pay all their bills and then go to Miami. Oh, forget Miami. That's not good enough. Go to Dubai and do whatever the fuck happens in Dubai as an American citizen. Like, get the fuck out of here, bro. We know what the fuck you're doing. But we're going to get into all of this again. It's almost like I keep on making like just every single take is an intro, but forgive me. I'm going to try to make this just a conversation that I'm having with you and just exploding everything that I know. And we get to whatever we get to by the end of this episode. So hopefully you guys are cool with that. But understand, even if this doesn't progress in a chronological A, B, C, D, we are still going to get from A to Z in this episode. We're just definitely going to hit a couple road bumps in between. And I'm hoping through all that, you still fuck with me. Dude, somebody give me a damn record deal before I just start making my own songs. But again, I'm losing myself already. The importance of describing the economic state of America right now. Jaden Smith was right when he said, can we talk about the socio-economic state or the social political state of the world right now? Jaden Smith knew what the hell he's talking about. Y'all was hating because he's a Nepo baby. But he's right. Because if we're looking at the current economic position that America's in the world, and then we look at the global economic position of the world, and then on top of that, we look at the culture wars happening within America to get America's intellectual poor people to stop organizing ourselves and looking up at the real issue and really looking at each other, pointing the finger at each other, hating each other for issues that we didn't create and we probably could solve, but we can't divide it amongst each other. This is enough energy and economic backing to invest in one, a completely new generation. And I'm talking empire, multi-generations, truly, of an American dynasty. This is enough wealth to not only save America from the debt that we've inevitably got ourselves in since becoming the world's standard, or the world's, we become the world's backing currency, whatever the term is. But on top of that, we also have enough wealth. If we do the crypto thing right, there's enough wealth to validate America as not only a world power, but a world leading power, even able to stand on its own 2 feet. And that could actually be one of the scariest things in human history. Because now America isn't basically held back by its economic confusion, since it never wants to truly admit that the only 2 things that we've ever been able to call a natural resource in this country, after absolutely decimating indigenous people, are our culture that is stripped from marginalized people and poor people, and slavery, which again is exploited out of marginalized people and poor people, but controlled and siphoned, the wealth is, of course, by wealthy white men. Old, but wealthy white men. So if you guys are really wondering as to why there's so much dehumanizing happening in legislation, and there's so much anti-DEI, anti-disabled, anti-woman, anti-this, it's to make sure that this one demographic of people can capture as much of this wealth, as much of this abundance as possible to leverage into validating this illusion of a country that is a cult / corporation into the new world, and to allow it to be a leading power, a leading national power in this digital reality that I'm 100% sure these tech bros are trying to enslave everybody to, but a majority of which the people that dissent against them, because the only people they want to live on earth with are people who are fully yes men, completely supportive of whatever reality and vision they have, even if it means selling the soul of this earth to create a reality that's going to self-destruct itself in literally a matter of no time, because the earth was created for human beings to take care of it and responsibility of it and create from it, not robots to take over an earth full of human beings and then use them as biofuel to live off of, because they think that they can transfer consciousness into robots so they can live forever on some dummy shit. Because Elon Musk is smart, right? Now, I know how triggering it is to hear, especially as one of them. Not myself, but if you're listening to this, I know how triggering it is to hear, white man, white man, white man. But understand, your forefathers created this reality and we are all living in it. We as marginalized people, myself and others included, were never supposed to even be able to put 2 and 2 words of English together other than yes, master. So you have to realize that intellectualism and intelligence and knowledge and wisdom as a whole has completely, especially as it's been democratized, alongside the access to and sharing of information that has come with the inception of the internet. You have to realize we're living in a completely different reality than the philosophies and the politics of our forefathers could ever sustain. And because of that, we have to look at that philosophy as pertaining to the goals that it had in mind and to who those goals were for and what success meant to those people and who that came at the mercy of, who that was consequencing, so we can make sure that we're making decisions in today's society and even creating systems in today's society that serve the people that we have deemed as humans, which is now human beings, not just a certain group of or looking type of human. So understand that we're never going to ground ourselves in reality without taking accountability for the psychosis that we call philosophy and politics that we've allowed the American exceptionalism and white supremacy as a whole to lead us to. But walking ourselves out of it allows us not only to free ourselves from being under the mercy of diversified people underneath a very singular demographic of people, but it allows us to complement each other in our differences, to support each other in our strengths and be there for each other in our weaknesses and complement where we see fit to make sure that we can meet the goal for each other rather than only for the sake of one deemed human. Because you have to think about how psychotic this is, just as in an existential perspective. Human beings are not human beings because one human being is so insecure that they've created a spiritual psychosis and existential legislation to validate dehumanization of another person instead of taking it upon themselves as to see why they are so insecure and afraid of somebody else's existence that more times than not doesn't include them. Like, how many more times are we going to victim blame all the people that are victims of colonization and white supremacy and all these types of extremist philosophies, instead of just looking at the extremist and saying, oh shit, why do you even believe that, when there's absolutely nothing in history that proves that other than the parts of history that you are refusing to take responsibility for or accountability for, because that means that you're literally just the villain. And the only way to dissuade people from only seeing you as the villain in history is making the only salvation that they have through their spirituality that you've also dominated the world with, their savior, a white man as well. So just as much as they're supposed to be afraid of, and their ancestors literally have it in their genes to be afraid of white men, also the only person who's strong enough and loving enough and respectful and caring enough to save them on the same existential level also happens to be a white man. So imagine that the borderline personality disorder that can create in anybody's brain. The same person who abuses me and exploits me every single fucking second on this earth because of who I am is supposed to be the person that comes save me after I go die, after I've sold my whole entire soul for that cult on this earth. Like, get the fuck out of here, bro. But that'll lead us into who are these Who are these white men that we're speaking of? Because, of course, we're not speaking about all of you guys. But who are these white men, these leaders of society that we speak of that perpetuate systems like this? From what I can tell, I'm familiar with four. I apologize. I'm familiar with four of these types of individuals. You have the military leaders. And the reason why I went from 3 to 4 is because I forgot to add these two as basically two sides of the same coin. The military leaders are the people who are allowed to legally abuse victims of their exploits in the world. And that is covered up by, and mind you, the victims of their abuse are sedated with what? Religion or patriotism or exceptionalism, which is followed by codependency to whatever is being fed to them, and never having access to their own reality or self-sufficiency again beyond their salvation, which is pretty interesting because how do you save somebody when you're crippling them so much to never be able to save themselves? But that's a conversation for another day if you guys don't want to speak about cults. So we're going to pair military and the church together. Military is the one that goes and does the conquesting and stealing the money from the people who aren't willing to submit and conform. And then the church ends up bringing in all the money and converting all the people who are willing to get on their hands and knees to submit to the philosophy that is being forced down their throats after just watching their parents get absolutely decimated by whatever conquest colonial tactics were used to take dominion over somebody else's land. Now, the next group of people are the industry leaders, which happen to be the people who, not just the property owners, but the people who own who cultivate the economic well-being. Basically just regulate capitalism within the system. After colonialism, the only way to continue to extracting wealth on a perpetual basis and include the people of that culture or of that community to continue to exploit their own culture is by perpetuating capitalism and making an unequal sense of capitalism that makes poor people work for validation and money and rich people don't work at all, but they get all the actual wealth in exchange for it. Because what's validation going to do when you could buy another yacht? What's validation going to do when you could go to the Amalfi Coast next summer? Or when America goes to a civil war? You could just go to Europe and watch it from your 5-star luxury bedroom, because that's what money can buy. Validation, compensation, certification doesn't buy any fucking thing other than acceptance by somebody else who can probably provide for themselves and is going to leave you high and dry once they realize that they have to split for their own well-being. Again, a lot of you guys don't think like this. Now, the final two groups of people, or really just the final one group of people, but I'm going to split it off into two groups because now that we live in a social media era with democratized authority to freedom of speech, if you want to call it that, because we did have freedom of speech, but that was before people could just say what the fuck they wanted from their own phone and broadcast that to the entire world. That's real freedom of speech. Freedom of speech the other way is just like... Yeah, free speech is free, but like only for the people who exist in society, because if anybody else says anything else, you're basically going to be you're going to be on a t-shirt. But we won't even let people sell the t-shirt. Final group of guys, I believe, are the politicians, which are basically the mainstream influencers, and the cultural leaders, who are the self-created cultural leaders of this current day as a consequence of the tech companies and social media. So basically your favorite influencers who have absolutely no coherent thoughts going on in between their brain, but they need to say something to validate why they have 10 million followers and they're making $500,000 for every speaking appearance, but they didn't graduate high school. These are the three groups, the four types, but the three groups of people that play in amongst each other. And mind you, we could even add another group in there, and that'll just be like the family structure or like the nuclear family structure that follows beyond that. But these are all leaders of three systems that create a fourth one: capitalism, patriarchy, and organized religion paired with national security and military to create our culture that is American patriotism and exceptionalism, because we just have to be better than everybody without telling you guys what it takes to get there. But these guys have come together and decided, instead of fighting against each other for fame and for the ability to own human beings and certain plots of land and maybe even follow the rules and participate in politics like an average democratic human, or not even democratic, you guys hate that term, an average human being would in a democratic society, they said, why don't we just come together and just own America? And then leverage not only the taxpayer money that will be funneled into allowing us to do our pet projects, whether it's Elon's SpaceX or it's Zuckerberg's metaverse. We can also leverage the military of America and the artificial intelligence of that military to punish anybody who has dissenting opinions against us while we are gutting America and funneling all of its money, the money it doesn't have, into our already wealthy pockets. Because no other government, no other nation, not even a third world country, would let this shit happen, bro. I'm telling you right now, the only reason why America is being taken over is because of the military. If you can have a legalized operation, you can own the government and be protected by the military. Like, who's going to dissent? Who's going to dissent a $1 trillion a year military that is fueled on red pill rage, fueled to the gills on thinking that black people are stealing their jobs, fueled to the gills thinking that women speak too much. Like, these people think that like all of their power comes from their fear and hatred of other people existing. And the only thing that's happened over the past 60 years has been that. And now this is finally their opportunity to exact revenge on existence to everybody that they deem as non-human. This is how you destroy your own country, and you end up getting it sold to the same people that you thought were going to save you from the demons that are your neighbors. Whether is it because they're black, they're women, they're transgender, or because they're disabled. Poor people are stupid enough to think that rich people are going to protect them from poor people that are only existing in that state because rich people got rich off of scamming and depleting livelihood and well-being to these poor people as a means of getting rich or staying rich. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Those people who sold off poor people around them, or poor people that they could exploit, or vulnerable enough to be exploited, those people now care about poor people after they've already gotten rich, as if they don't have to continue to sustain this type of lifestyle to maintain what they've created. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's, and this is why you destroy the Department of Education. This is why you come in and just push heavily anti-intellectualism, because you can't have people knowing that they're participating in this type of reality. You have to have them just in a position, such dire survival mode. All they know is just the next day. It's just Sunday to Saturday. They don't know anything beyond that. As long as there isn't aliens in the sky pissing on them, then it just doesn't matter. And that's how American politics has gotten. Mind you, if you think I'm going to go here for 1 second and just call out like white men without speaking about how neoliberalism and even like that kind of bastard white woman feminism plays a role into this, I apologize. You're utterly mistaken. I do not care about that thing you call cancel culture. That cultural fascism that you call cancel culture. I don't give a fuck. Freedom of speech lives in my veins, and I have a mouth and a brain so I can utilize it every day. But as it was clearly displayed, especially during the Kamala Harris campaign, you can see that this neoliberal identity, from my perspective, as somebody who could engage with those people, but I don't, and like engaging with debate bros and what do you call those people? Devil's advocates, because they literally just sit there to mentally masturbate over topics that they have no intention of actually providing solutions for. Because they get all their power out of dominating a conversation or a thought space and being able to show up to philosophy club rather than actually addressing issues and living on the other side of that. Because most of them, they won't say it, but they genuinely are afraid of being martyrized. They're afraid of being Fred Hampton. They're afraid of being MLK. They're afraid of being Malcolm X. So they want just enough authority to be a credible figure in the space to be remembered in history, but they don't want the risk of losing their life and that being what we remember them for. But I want to make sure that I'm allowing us as a people to recognize, if you consider yourself a leftist, you're going to have to just jump so far left off the slave ship that you're in the water. And you're just trying to figure out who you are as a globalized human being. There is no more left, right, center in the United States. There is center, right, and there is you're a lying motherfucker if you say you're on the left because you're about to put a red hat on top of that blue hair. In no time at all. Get ready for it. But this thing that I've described on multiple occasions, even that Kamala Harris video I made in like last August, 2024. Depends on what year you're watching this right now. But the ideological fascism is what I believe, as a sociologist, self-proclaimed, is what led to conservatives actually desiring to implement fascism in the real world. Because they feel, since we have constricted them and held back their rights to leverage freedom of speech and say what they want, which is never anything truly intellectual. It's just like, we hate women, we hate gay people, we hate black people. But we have held them back from being able to have the privilege to hate. And the reason why I even brought up white women feminism and neoliberalism is because the whole point of it, if it's to not address and solve issues, because that would mean they'd have to give up power to the people that they're serving so they can be self-sufficient, then the only reason they exist is to dominate thought spaces with this self-proclaimed and boasted at points intellectual and moral superiority, just enough to get the victim to feel so humiliated of this shame and of this exposure that the victim goes, yeah, I hate myself so much. What can I do to fix myself? Tell me anything. Just let me know what I gotta do to be a better human being. Because that's how it would work for them. To get guilt tripped into doing what's right. Not knowing what is right. And actually doing that. Or seeking out what is right. And being able to accept what happens with failure. The consequences that come with being wrong. Without being afraid of losing their damn lives. Because truly, the fear of losing your life for being wrong is something that's experienced by marginalized people, especially black people. White people have different opportunities, and it's because the color of your skin, if you don't want to accept it or not. But I'm telling you what the reality of the situation is as somebody who doesn't have that privilege and has been on multiple occasions on the wrong side of having the wrong color skin. But the thing that I'm describing here with this Good Samaritan politic is you're not taking any accountability yourself when all you do is point the finger at people, calling them the villain, the villain, the villain. And then even worse than that, you don't give them any solutions as to how they're going to come up from that and then also come up into a world where they are still allowed to be powerful and to accept themselves without having to get that power and that acceptance out of dehumanizing other people. It's like you want them held from a 6-foot or a 10-foot pole, but then you want to control them with a noose at the end of that pole to make sure that they do everything that you say exactly to your leisure, just like a trauma survivor would, an unhealed trauma survivor who wants to control completely from a complete distance and lack of or rejection of responsibility to protect their own feelings and the inability to deal with the dysregulation of their own feelings. Doing so by controlling the world outside of the self. So whether you want to call it real fascism happening right now with Elon Musk and Donald Trump, you cannot say that it was not inspired by the cultural fascism that has been happening. And mind you, it's not just the cultural fascism of telling a certain group of people that, hey, they can't use their freedom of speech or can't say this. Because mind you, I'm not a conservative and I'm not defending the shit that they say. I know what it's like to be on the other side of these racist ass tyrants. I know what it's like to be on the other side, or tirades. I know what it's like to be on the other side of this, on the oppressive bullshit. And I know that there's experiences that I haven't even faced because of my identity, that other people are at the mercy of because of how they express themselves and who they are. What I'm describing is that the cultural fascism from the neoliberal comes from guilt. It doesn't come from desiring to see marginalized people be self-sufficient. It doesn't come from wanting to see us go beyond the scope of white supremacy. It just wants to feed serving the of the savior. And it's so important to admit that, especially as it pertains to this white women feminism that I keep on describing. And when I say white women feminism, I'm speaking about American white women. I'm not speaking about the rest of the globe. I'm not sure what you guys do out there, but I'm pretty sure you guys have different cultures and family systems that support you in not falling so deeply into victimhood, or not to victimhood, but into the victimized psychosis of the digital reality. You guys may hate me for that, but I'm telling you right now, America does not have any real culture or any real external real world grounding to support people who are weaning off of digital psychosis. And you may fall into so many deep psychological, philosophical traps online that it'll destroy your real world, and it'll actually inhibit your ability to consciously participate with any coherent responses to a real world conversation that can be applied, because the only thing that you do is think about theories and hypotheticals and philosophies on the internet that have never lived in the real world, making you psychotic. But I'll wrap this section up of our podcast as it pertains to white women feminism and that neoliberal social justice suicide, as there's only so much calling somebody stupid and expecting them to become smart on the back end of that you can do before they just get angry that they're being called stupid when they don't think they are. They just attack you because now they're angry that they're stupid. It's like, how smart do you think this is? And that's why we can come to the conclusion this is born from the thought space, the think space, the think tank. Had to throw a couple trials before I got there. Of white women, of millennial, neoliberal, McKinsey employed, McKinsey and Company, white women. Because again, throwing theories without facing the consequences that will happen on the other side of them directly. One, because you're too protected by whiteness in society, or two, because you are going to sabotage the feminist movement, or at least run away from it for the sake of submitting into this Handmaid's Tale reality. Because it's going to be sold back to you as trad wife culture, and you're going to get married and you're going to have a husband and a house. And a lot of you guys don't give a fuck about social politics, and you don't give a fuck about women other than white women. So when you realize that this dehumanization of society is going to make it a clearer world for white women, and also a more domineering, pedestalized world for them, a lot of you are going to, again, put the red hat on top of your blue hair and forget that you even were a part of this shit. Especially when you can't use going to protest and social justice movements. You can't use that for college application, because half of these colleges are getting shut down in the next 20 years, or the next 10 years, really. So now what are you going to use to perform that you are a good Samaritan? What are you going to leverage to have power over people who are vulnerable and need help, but you genuinely can't help them, but you can offer them insight and you can offer them hope and belief that, again, won't do anything for them other than shelling money out of their pocket into your bank account. So, again, the reason why we as black people have to really, really, really heal the trauma that we have, especially just marginalized people as a whole, the reason why it's so important for us to heal and to grow beyond the psychosis of the master is that there's only so much of white people and white liberals telling us, you need to get revenge on the master. You need to get revenge on the master. There's only so much of that we can hear before the master ends up destroying our existence. And the reason why we keep on listening to that voice saying revenge, 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 riot, rebel, radical, the reason why we keep listening to that is because we don't listen to our own selves, our own calling, that is saying, leave it alone. Let this system terrorize the people who actually do believe in it, because it has actually helped them. It has never helped us. It has only fed off of us and lived off of us and manipulated us into continuing to believe in it for the sake of exploiting us even more. This is why I love that psychosis that is, you're going to be a slave for me on earth your entire life, and then I'm going to promise you something that I can't guarantee you're going to get after you're dead. And there's going to be no way for you to validate it either, or come correct me if I'm wrong. That's why I love that. I love how that's like the mainstream religious psychosis of the world we live in. And that's just pure sign as to what kind of world we're walking ourselves into. With national governments turning into oligarchies like I'm freaking like flipping hotcakes. But all of that neoliberal white feminism, revenge on the master, revenge on the master, revenge on the master, with no understanding that they're allowed to say those things and to have those delusions because they're going to submit back to patriarchy. 99% of white American women will submit back to patriarchy. You're going to see OnlyFans models submit back to patriarchy, wearing those damn Handmaid's Tale rags. I'm telling you right now, don't even call me crazy for that. I'm looking into the future with all 6 of my eyes, like the goddamn Spider-Man. And they're going to, because at the end of the day, it's actually fight to liberate marginalized people and potentially have no power whatsoever in that world ever again. Or sacrifice this bullshit that you were doing, fighting for this illusion of independence, which is really not independence, it's a cult of identity of womanhood, because you want to exist around other women to exploit all the cultures that other women can provide you, but you want to own them and dominate them while also saying, hey, none of you guys would be free as women without us white women leading this charge and saving you guys. So there's another trauma-bonded cult of identity that is going to be used for the sake of creating a patriarchy for white women that serves them in the way that they want to be praised, which is their deep, deep, deep desire to be emulating or reflective of the white men that they desire to have the power of. And that will also double down, consequentially come at the cost of black and brown people being able to heal and have our own relationships with each other. Black people, black men and women being able to heal the issues within our own community and realizing that white men have never humanized white women. And white women's existential hatred of white men comes from that fact. But they refuse to directly face them and address that. So they triangulate marginalized people and use our struggle to join them in fighting against the master that they will submit to if things get too overwhelming, which they always do. And we will face the double whammied consequences of, because these people are not going to support us when the consequences come down. They're only going to support us when we're riling up the master to get revenge. And now, what is that revenge? What is that revenge? Actually, forgive me. The epitome of this white women feminism, and again, the triangulation of responsibility that comes from not being able to take accountability for what these people not being able to leverage power and authority properly, or at least having malintention, is putting up, last second, putting up Kamala Harris to run as your political representative in probably one of the easiest political elections to win on planet Earth. You're running against like a 48-time felon. They throw Kamala Harris up there because they want to blame black people for not voting for the Democratic Party and us to be the problem that they didn't win. And then everybody hates black people again because that's just the lowest hanging fruit. Just the saggiest of saggy titties is when all else fails, point the finger at a black person. Even if you are black, just find another black person and point the finger at them. But then also double down on the enmeshment of women's struggle and strife to invalidate the power struggle and the power dynamic that white women have over all women, and they also have over marginalized men due to their whiteness. But because they don't believe they have an exactly reflective amount of power that white men have on an equal level, they think that they actually have less power than marginalized men, not knowing that their whiteness as white women puts them above the social credit system of marginalized men. But it's because marginalized men can be exploited for their labor as slaves and can literally look like masculine human animals. So it seems like we are physically potentially more capable of power and destruction. But socially, culturally, white women take the cake. The culture is held together. This white supremacist culture is held together by white women. And if you're a hater after you listen to this conversation, go ahead and pick up those 52% of white women that voted for Donald Trump. Supposedly, after he did everything he did and after he's taking away abortion rights and taking away access to this and making sure that you can't work in the workplace and basically reverting everything that was done during the Me Too movement, toxic workplace environments. Yeah, 52%. But you're going to go blame all these other people, right? You're going to go blame all of us. You're going to go, look at all those rappers voting for Donald Trump. Of course, they're all broke and they need a bag. Like, of course they're going to do that. And they're all fucking felons. Nobody's going to support that shit. But But you look to us, you point the finger at us. And then also, the reason why I said this was just the Kamala Harris was the supreme triangulation of responsibility from white women feminism is that when Project 2025, which was downplayed, why? Because you guys, these are you neoliberals, your peers, your brothers, your sisters, your aunties, your uncles, your family members are conservative. You think you're cool because you're the only liberal in your family because you post liberal memes on your Instagram page. It doesn't fucking matter. Your whole family is conservative. 4 out of 5 of you are voting red, meaning that you are red. It doesn't matter what you say. Because your vote is not backed by any career. Your vote is not backed by a family. Your vote is not backed by anything that actually matters. Your vote is backed by your own young person intuition and energy, which is going to fuse out the second you realize, just like the fucking hippies in the 70s, you need a job to pay bills to live on Earth. And you aren't bigger than the system. You aren't going to escape the matrix. You're here forever. You're here until you're dead. And imagine if you really think you're going to fight the rest of your life for other people who you can just be convinced don't care about you because you're fed more stereotypes about them on your mainstream media than you will ever learn from actually engaging with them in the real world. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. And if you think anybody in these government positions that lives on Martha's Vineyard cares about poor people, I need you to go ahead and take like 10 limitless pills, bro. And hopefully that adds like 3 brain cells to whatever you're working with right now. But I know you guys are sitting here seeing that the Democratic Party or the leaders of the Democratic Party that were just telling us, Project 2025 might end the world. And then just like Donald Trump won and they said, we are going to be cordial and let him win instead of tearing up the government. And then they all just vanish. Just vanish. You were telling us for the past 18 months with Super Bowl level advertising that the world is going to end. And then the guy wins the election and then we're just done? What? Just look for the signs, bro. Follow the money. Under capitalism, just follow the money, bro. Everyone's lying, bro. Money walks and no. Money talks, bullshit walks is one of the greatest freaking phrases I've ever heard in my entire life. And that pertains so much so to the political state of America and the changes that will be made in relation to this Trump presidency and the transformation of what it means to be an American. But the reason why those people, especially, and this is actually another important part of the conversation to add in here, the reason why people like Bernie Sanders, after saying, we need to fight the oligarchy, fight American oligarchy, oligarchy. The reason why literally walking coffins and dinosaurs like that continue to speak but still not apply any of the things that they're saying into the real world are because they know they're like 70% of the people that they've been trying to convince for the past 60 years that they give a fuck about them by stealing our votes, calling us the black vote and shit. They're about to do us so ridiculously dirty. They're just automatically pivoting to their center-right conservative side of people who want to be good Samaritans and like get guilt-tripped into politics. They're just going to directly focus on them in the same exact way that Donald Trump focuses on his cult. Because when you only speak to your cult and you only teach your cult what reality is, it doesn't matter what the opposition is. Because you and your cult and your engagement with them is what's creating reality. And anybody else who is of less significance than that, or at the mercy of that reality, will have to secede to orbit or fall into orbit of that reality. And that is actively what's happening in America right now. So go ahead and, mind you, blame men, but don't let white women stop you from focusing on the conversation about race. And don't ever let these like self-proclaimed hyper-intellectual or morally superior people convince you that somehow the higher up you go in intelligence and intellect, the more or the less empathy that you actually have for other people. Something that I believe is that the more intellectual you get, the more depressed you are, because the more aware you are of how deeply desensitized this world is. And deeply depleted this reality is. and how improper the structures are, how intentionally built this system is to sway all abundance into the hands of people who care for nothing but their own selves and carnal desires. Not even for the oxygen that somebody else may breathe. But hopefully that was cool with y'all, because this is the type of situation that leads us into walking ourselves into the literal destruction of our society, handing our federal government and our country's future into the hands of people who were waiting, criminals, potentially, allegedly, criminals who've been waiting for an opportunity to get this rich and protect themselves this much and leverage a cult of literally adult children. Oh goodness, like it almost makes me sick thinking about like how if you're an opportunistic millionaire scammer who's looking for an opportunity to basically hit 100 mil selling dreams and lies and hopes, America's the place you got to come move to. Forget Dubai. Come to America and kick it in Miami. A bunch of other people that act just like you probably hang out there too, putting that fucking cocaine up their nose all fucking day. Now in this next part, we're going to get into not only the red pill resurgence and how that will be leveraged to incite this Trojan horse takeover of America, but the plot that I have been able to see and how this may be exacted into our reality as a means of making straight up wealth inequality permanent, and then turning the United States into a machine for global oligarchs and billionaires to exploit fresh crop of slaves for however long it takes to get them to create the reality that they want. But this is the belly of the beast. If it wasn't before, it is right now. It's about time we get into it. So how about it? Now, at this point in the show, it's going to be pretty important that you understand the state of private equity and the role that that plays in influencing the destruction of companies on their final leg as a means of extracting whatever wealth can be taken from them as quickly as possible to then throw them away without taking into consideration the well-being of the people that, I don't know, work there and their lives after their company and their career simultaneously have been gutted and thrown into the trash. So a billionaire or whoever bought that can buy more yachts and continue to buy access to more child slaves. Allegedly. Maybe they are buying those yachts and they're just having fun, cool parties on them with the 20-year-olds that they invite because they're 75 years old. It's getting harder to defend. What I'm saying with all this is, if we're looking at America as a failing company, that the CEO is trying to convince us it is not a failing company, but it really is a failing company. Now the private equity company has come to the country and said, hey, we can save this country. We can save this company from completely going bankrupt and you guys absolutely having an abysmal failure. Our president, the CEO of our company, took it upon himself and said, you know what? How about you guys come in and do whatever you need to do to our country? We don't even care what you got to do to this country, this company, forgive me. Just do whatever it takes to make sure that we can get out of here scotch-free without going into debt. And we, as in the CEO and the shareholders, absent of the employees, that will be blindsided by this shit at some point. So the private equity company, Doge, I like to call it, comes into the United States government and has to have its way with our federal government, with our already broken federal government they told us that they were going to save the American people and save democracy and freedom, right? How come that happens to be the same exact thing that I say every time I'm going to step outside of my place of living to light up and blow down joints full of the finest marijuana to forget that I am a black autistic human being living underneath a self-destructing American empire? Hate that I had to include that, but hopefully you guys have some respect for mother marijuana just like I do. But the reason why I include this private equity explanation, which really isn't a decent explanation, I apologize for that. But the reason why I give that aspect as it pertains to our conversation is because Doge and Elon and whoever owns Elon, because there's more people behind him, wealthier people that have real money, real oil money, real slave money that they're holding on to. Those people are now deciding what happens to the American people behind the guise of Donald Trump, because they know that no matter what they do behind the mask of Donald Trump, his supporter base will validate it enough because they are stupid enough to believe that it's Donald Trump and his ingenuity and intention that is the reason why we're making these decisions. Even if it's destroying the government, even if it's sabotaging the economy, even if it's dehumanizing American people that contribute to the economy and are probably the only reason why it's on its fucking hind legs anyway. This country is being bought like a failing business at its lowest point, and we're about to get into what our private equity company is about to do and to destroy this thing. But I want you to look at social media is a very interesting space because you have people who are able to wear these nice clothes and go on lavish dates, and then you ask them what they do and they say, "Oh, I work for a private equity company." And you say, "Oh, well, maybe I want to do that in the future. Maybe that's going to be my career." Do you understand how many people are kicked out of their jobs, lose their businesses, lose access to everything, or their businesses are strapped onto so much debt they're forced to go bankrupt or sell for the sake of making as much money for the shareholders that destroyed it? How come you don't speak to those people? Oh, because they're homeless. Oh, because they literally went insane during that process. Oh, because they're so poor, they don't even live in the same city that they were working in anymore. Like, sit here and think. America has to sell you the amount of money that you can make doing all these types of jobs to stop you from seeing the absolute pure dehumanization that happens because of them. But now let's get into that. Because you're not just, as much as you can hate poor people or marginalized people, you're not just going to be able to sell them, especially at mass, their own oppression, like their own eternal oppression, and like force them into it, walk them into it, and then have them perpetuate it themselves. It takes two to tango, and we're going to have to incentivize the future of digitized slavery. And how do we do that? We just find the most vulnerable people in America, intellectually vulnerable people in America. If I use any other word, that'll probably just that'll probably get pitchforks at my house like I'm freaking Shrek in the swamp. But you take the most intellectually vulnerable people in America and you sell them the illusion of a new America that is just infinitely better of whatever they're living in right now, the same way that you'd sell post-colonized communities Christianity after you've just wreaked havoc and destroyed everything that they live in, like every piece of their environment. You sell a dream so far into the future. Robot cars, flying, robot cars, robot humans, flying cars, trips to Mars, things that just are science fiction, so far beyond like what is even potentially capable in reality. It's just, you have to believe it or you know it's false. But we live in such a lax society, such a fucked up society, and an ignorant society. Yeah, people are going to believe that more times than not, especially if it's a wealthy person who can just throw money around and sell dreams, bro. Rich off dreams. But yeah, that's going to... you sell such a grand illusion. The best charlatans do this because you understand how much investment, even if that's really sacrifice, it's going to take to get to even making that reality potentially, not even for real, but potentially come close to be grasped and experienced. Because mind you, that reality again can only come as close to be experienced by the owners of the reality. Wealthy, the ultra wealthy. Us poors are just being used to manifest it closer to them, so they can exist in it and we don't. We can live through experiencing them, get to experience, like third hand. But a lot of you guys are cool with that, bro. A lot of you guys are cool being bystanders and backseat drivers of other people who are living their lives. And that can't be me, bro. I'm too much of a fucking rebel to follow in with that shit, bro. But hopefully I didn't lose myself right there. You're going to sell that just egregious, ridiculously sized dream so far out there. Why? Because you have to do a whole bunch of lead up shit to it that is so... Apologize for that. But you have to do so much ridiculous stuff leading up to it that is non-human, dehumanizing, anti-this, that you're just going to get to a point where people are going to wake up and look at each other and say, what are we doing this for? Like, we already took this human right from so-and-so. We already did this here. We did this here. So at the end of the day, genuinely, what is the point? And unless you want to accept the fact that the point is some fetishized desire to abuse people that are deemed non-human to get those carnal desires out into the world without having to inhibit them or, probably even better, address them so you don't punish other people with your own emotional dysregulation. If you don't sell that giant dream, and I know I'm kind of repeating myself here, you don't get to do all the little things, the little nasty shit to people to make that dream a reality. I hope I've convinced you guys of that. There's not going to be a cure to cancer that comes from artificial intelligence. If a cure came, it would come from a human being who decided to research and study science and biology beyond capitalist profit. Because most research is backed by capitalists and institutions that are supported by needing to make profit. So if you're not making the investor profit, then it doesn't matter. And even worse, think about the millions and billions of dollars that go every single year in serving cancer patients. You're eliminating an entire economy by actually giving a fuck about people. But by creating more issues for them to endure and then increasing the prices of every single thing that has been individualized. And this is why I keep on speaking about the privatization of the entire government and not just healthcare. Because think about how you go for a hospital stay for 7 days, you're getting charged tens of, if not hundreds of dollars, every single pill that you even consume in there. Every single fucking pill that you consume in there, even if all of it in that concoction is necessary for your healing and that's the only concoction that you need. Or the only one that you can consume. Now you're at the mercy of paying. And if you're scared of that happening there and people going into medical debt for healing, imagine when people go into debt for existing. You don't fucking understand. It's all just this. MAGA won the battle. We won the battle. We look at those woke losers. They're gonna look at those wokies. Dude, you're gonna be a slave like the rest of us. And even worse than that, you don't have a identity outside of America. You don't have a life outside of America. All you know is American exceptionalism, and you're putting yourself in a predicament to where when America, even if it lives, you can live and benefit off it. But if America dies, you're at that same exact mercy. And that's going to be your fate too. Because you've lived so deeply beneath the mask or behind the mask of America, you've allowed it to sabotage everybody else's well-being and livelihood for the sake of perpetuating its own well-being. Mind you, you guys also may be confused, and probably not confused, honestly, because as it pertains to a cult, you need codependent, insecure, self-rejecting members. So you can't sell this new age of patriotism, grandiosity, by telling the reality as to what you're doing to get there. Because there is absolutely no power in ignorance. There is no power in ignorance other than the power that you perceive yourself to have as a means of having it over somebody else, or the power that the ignorance is feeding you to think that you have or that you are. Intelligence is going to humble everybody who assumes that. And even the most powerful people, the most powerful intellectual people, mind you, understand that they aren't the grandest of human beings, the grandest of species on this planet. And even they need to know their role and humble themselves when faced with power beyond theirs. But we have to live in this anti-intellectual, this very ignorant society so people can cling more onto the beliefs that align with sedating their emotions rather than leaning on what they know or what they can apply in their real world to test, like scientific theory, and hypothesize, go through the process, and then understand this is a conclusion I've come to based on critical thinking, analysis, and experimentation, which allows us to be a lot more intentional and focus a lot more on the decisions that we're making and what we're pursuing in this life, rather than just letting ourselves be fed anything that makes our emotions feel like how they're supposed to feel. Because what if how we are feeling is how we want to feel, but how we need to feel is the complete opposite of that? Because feeling those negative emotions, feeling that depth, feeling that change is what's going to inspire us to make the changes that we need to make to pursue the path or to further go on the path that we're supposed to be on. But it said it's more than just anti-intellectualism. Because when you're not looking at that from a position of superiority, especially intellectual superiority, you're looking at from a position of, oh my goodness, you're destabilizing somebody's ability to be self-sufficient, to support themselves, to control their own awareness. Because truly, that's one of the few things that the individual can control in this life, cultivating and tapping into their own awareness. And many people sacrifice that awareness for the sake of the validation that comes from surrendering to whatever is expected of them from the community beyond. Which again is let's not get too deep into the religious aspect of it all, but that's what religion is. It's a collective of believers that are believing so hard through ritualistic practice and philosophical beliefs and reinforcement of those beliefs that they turn belief systems into reality, not because it's real, but because they, based on their delusional belief, are actualizing a truth that only they know, that was started off as an opinion, into reality. And now the final piece of turning that dream or that vision into reality is reinforcing it with the real world. More times than not, the real world will show you opposition. Even people and intellectual people are bound to show you opposition. But if you're an ignorant person and you've built your community off ignorance, then you have to maintain the ignorance to continue to sedate the people within your psychosis, but protect yourself truly from having any kind of opposition, intellectual opposition. That will bring the whole entire house of cards down. So let's leverage this anti-intellectualism and use it to get average, everyday white dudes who are insecure and hate the fact that they aren't being centered and pedestaled in society that was supposedly built for them to inherit. Why don't, instead of actually giving them resources to do that in a way that they can support themselves in and contribute to society, why don't we just dehumanize literally every single walking person that does not have white skin or a dick in between their legs as a means of reinforcing the superiority of the most insecure demographic in America? How about this? Let's check you out right here. We're going to make new slaves because you need that for an industrial revolution. There is no educational system. There's no economic employment support system that cares about helping poor people, especially marginalized like colored poor people, get up to the top of corporate executive society. And how are we going to create these new slaves? We're not just going to say slavery is back, because that's not going to go properly with the collective, especially with those like guilt-tripping neoliberals. But what can work is destroying the Department of Education, saying, look how busted this Department of Education is. The only system that so many lower income and really marginalized people depend on for access to not only mainstream culture, but mainstream information and applicable skill development so they can apply for employment in the real world and actually start building a name for themselves. How about we destroy the Department of Education so it's just going to be wealthy and poor? You're either born wealthy or you're born poor. And you can fuck up being wealthy and you can join the poors, but chances are you're never going to go from poor to rich because there's no ladder anymore. And the ladder was 1,000 feet tall. And the ladder doesn't exist anymore. So now the only thing you can do is jump. Yeah, we're going to destroy cultivating a class consciousness, thinking that the Department of Education was the thing that was punishing white boys because it was making them more insecure about their own identity. But we're going to leverage that insecurity to destroy the only thing that literally connected the poor and the wealthy, or at least connecting as a means of accessibility. Now the only accessibility will be poor people coming down to exploit, or rich people coming down from the top above their glass ceiling to exploit poor people, or bring poor people up to inspire poor people to sell dreams or to even buy dreams that have no intention of returning them anything. And there won't be any poor people going up to the top and then going online and making hit piece documentaries about everything they saw at a Diddy party. All that shit's over, bro. I'm telling you right now. The only open door will be from the top to the bottom when there's more exploitation that needs to happen, or they need like a new culture to make more money off of. And then you want to go ahead and destroy DEI. I was going to say department, but at this point, you want to go ahead and destroy DEI because you think that black people are stealing jobs? What, you think that we didn't apply for them? Did you not see the whole entire Trump administration? People with absolutely zero certifications just walked into the federal government. Like, you, at least January 6th, you guys actually tried to break in there. I'm not condoning that, but at least you guys actually tried. This time around, all the demons just walked straight in. And now they're employed. And they're firing everybody who doesn't blindly comply, blindly submit to their authority. Fuck employment. Fuck diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is no such thing. This is nepotism, and I did something for you, or you have blackmail on me, so you get a job too. Mind you, I'd like to include in here a part of the conversation that people don't like to have. DEI was for white women. DEI has nothing to do with black people, which is interesting that you say black people as if black men and women are looked at or perceived similarly in the workplace. One, they are not. Two, DEI is just a new term for woke. Woke is just a term to say black when you can't say nigger, which is what you really want to say. Like, let's just let bygones be bygones and just say how shit is, how it really is, instead of this performative bullshit that always ends up getting exposed through a racist tweet, through a conversation that you had that got leaked with somebody, through a this, through a that, through a dude. You hate black people, bro, and it's just this the lowest hanging fruit. Again, it's such low hanging fruit. It's like a titty just sagging off the ground. Like, you can't even grab it with your hand. You got to just kick it. But again, you guys don't have any standing support to actually reach for any of the higher fruit of like critical thinking that comes with like actual intelligence and actual real world experience and like application. You just go for the things that allow you to conveniently sit in the same position that you've always sat in, not knowing that you're still insecure. No matter how many people get dehumanized, how many people lose their rights, you're still the insecure one. And this whole entire world is literally walking on eggshells around your insecurities that are centered, not the needs of literally everybody else who continue to get overlooked and surpassed because we have to serve every immediate desire of, again, the most vulnerable, I don't even want to call them vulnerable, forgive me, the most insecure demographic in American culture. But because exploiting their insecurities allows us to dehumanize literally every demographic of people in America, rather than healing their insecurities and then protecting all those people from the dehumanization that could happen based on these broken systems. It makes too much money to allow these insecure white boys to accept themselves. It makes us too much money to get them to hate everybody and everything and not look in the mirror and like hate themselves. But the destruction of DEI and the Department of Education, that was just the external facing opportunities for marginalized people, especially really black people, because we got a bunch of Nazis who run the government now. It was just saying, blacks, get your ass out of here. And women, you guys complain a lot too. So you guys can also join them and sit outside. But it really doesn't mean that, because they want women to just sit inside, but inside the homes that they own for their nuclear families, to basically just be baby incubators and cultural cultivators, invalidating any truth beyond the one that's going to deem them acceptance in the household that they're probably being abused and abandoned in. This trad wife culture, like, I want you guys, and I'm glad that I have this autistic black and white brain instead of just looking at reality the same way like neurotypicals do, just completely in alignment with seeking validation, because we're never going to get to the truth if we keep on eating up these lies, bro, and eating up this propaganda as if it does anything other than just like gaslight us out of what reality really is. But again, we have to destroy the external opportunities that marginalized people, especially blacks, have of going up to upper society and giving themselves and their people a way out. Why? Because that is going to be enough that's going to garner enough social support. And even from liberals, there are white liberals who think that DEI was bad because it was giving unwarranted positions or like uncertified people with jobs. Never that. No, DEI or not, black people have had to go above and fucking beyond. On top of that, black women have had to go above and beyond to access bare fucking minimum opportunity. So yes, anytime we are in a position alongside you, we are better than you, because we are being invalidated for every other gift that we already have, on top of our ability to conform ourselves into submitting to your collective white supremacist like social validation. Because in every one of these toxic workplace environments, it's waiting for the marginalized person to step out of line to when then they can now be pelted with all of the abusive terms and titles that were being held within by their peers, as long as they were willing to perform as the tokenized, marginalized person. But the second they wanted to bring their own home-cooked food in, the second they wanted to speak their own ideas, talk about their own culture, why these human rights matter to them, oh, now they're just a monkey, now they're just a this, now it's just a... But again, you guys don't care. So this is why I have these conversations, because at least my people do. And if they don't, at least this is going to give them some clarity as to why the people around them care so little about their well-being. But when you're blocking out marginalized people from accessing traditional corporate roles, you're going to leverage that opportunity to destroy the federal government, and not just destroy the federal government, but reconfigure the federal government in a way to where technologically it has to depend on these tech leaders, because they're going to integrate technology that they own, one, and two, they're the only ones who know how to use. Just like the financial system of 2008, the reason why none of those bankers got arrested was because they're the only people who knew how to play that fucked up game. They're the only people who set up all those rules and set up all those traps in the infrastructure. So they convinced the world, hey, don't throw us in prison for 10 to 20 years, and we're going to get us out of this. Mind you, they didn't. They just became 100 millionaires and billionaires off of that. But nobody cares, right? Because American ingenuity. Mind you, when I laugh during this type of shit, I'm laughing because shit is just so ridiculously false. It honestly hurts my soul. Like, I don't even have any tears to cry anymore. It's just comical at this point. But the destruction of the federal government, as marginalized people, we have to realize something like this, especially as my black people. That government never gave a fuck about us, and it was never protecting us. And anytime something like one of these like offhand militias like the KKK and whatnot came and destroyed our Black Wall Street, the government did not do nothing to protect us or support us. Mind you, I would love to say that the government actually participated in influencing some of those community destruction events, which probably won't get revealed for another 50 years in one of those CIA leaked documents. But this is the catch-22. If the longer that white boys allow marginalized people of all kinds to be blocked from accessing these higher levels of society, and even worse, to be blocked from accessing society as a whole and the ability to take care of ourselves, they're next. It's only happening to us to learn how to do it to them in a way that they can never reject it. So I'm telling you, it's they wake up and see, oh, empathy for somebody beyond myself, and I didn't have to take 100 grams of mushrooms to feel somebody else's humanity. Or I didn't have to take a whole slab of acid tabs to realize that I'm a human being and I have a heart, and that person that I've been abusing has a heart too, and maybe I should like them. Like, what? But that's the hilarious thing. Until those guys, those literally like born with no empathy, human demographic of people, find the empathy in the humanity of other people that they have had to reject because it's been the source of their freedom and the power that they have had in the modern world, that's when this whole charade ends. And this is why, especially in my No Land for Good Men series, like a lot of people kind of give me some backlash because I said something about, like, I was always humanizing men who have left patriarchy and saying like there's nowhere to go beyond healing from patriarchy other than just being pummeled by white neoliberal women who just want to exact revenge for every single man on planet Earth on every guy who exists ever. But I'm right. And every single day continues to prove how right I am about that type of shit. I kind of lost myself a little bit at the end there, but what I'm trying to say is it's only, and it's the same exact conversation we can have, or we can scale it differently by just focusing on the Palestinians in Gaza. If we as American people collectively, now this goes beyond race and gender, if we as American people allow that to happen to those people who don't deserve it whatsoever, for literally the luxury rental real estate exploitation that Jared Kushner is going to exact under the blessing of Donald Trump, it's going to happen to us next. And when it happens to us, not only will the world not be here to hear us cry, but even scarier than that, by the time it comes home, the technology, the military tech, will be so advanced and so perfected, there is going to be no point in dissenting. Like, what are you going to dissent about? There's mass surveillance everywhere. Oh, and they didn't catch you doing the crime? Why don't we just use our AI video generator to create a video of you doing the crime? Oh, we can't do that? Well, how about we just falsify your alibis? And how about we actually reconfigure your connectivity? And how about we shut off your electric vehicle? And how about we... Are you seeing this? It's... Forget yes and no. There is yes and consequences that come with you saying no. This is the world we're creating. Fuck a democracy. This is like... I don't think you guys know what... A lot of you guys have actually grown up with like families that respected your autonomy and like communities that gave a fuck about your individuality. Yeah, that's gone. Especially if you're poor. And I hope you guys recognize, or at least can appreciate, those last days and years that you get to enjoy this before it gets completely stripped from us. But this is the type of shit that we're selling, bro. And I started off with that, just destruction of Department of Education and the DEI, because that really kind of, as a wider compass, affects all of us. But even more importantly, that leads us into these other aspects of social dehumanization and legislation. Think about the abortion ban. Think about the abortion ban. In a world where healthcare is already private and people are already going into debt over healthcare, you're not helping anybody. You're not even helping the veterans with PTSD that have fought in unnecessary wars for this country to continue to distract the world from seeing that we have no power other than our ability to torment and destroy other people. That's literally it. And sell dreams and really exploit our own people, selling our culture to the globe, not letting them know how much wealth they're actually creating for this country and for the executives that get to siphon all that power. If we find ourselves in America walking into a Handmaid's Tale society, it's going to be because, and this is going to be a theory, but again, I haven't been wrong yet about a handful of things, so I'm willing to put my eggs in this basket. The only way we get to a Handmaid's Tale society is if white women continue to lead the feminist movement. That's it. If you're willing to give up ownership to be a part of a collective of women who have diverging ideas and concepts, and not only just that, but allow for more than just women to exist in that community, bro, like go ahead and wrap it up. It's the once this type of stuff, and the reason why I say that is because when white people collectively, but especially white women, get overwhelmed with social justice, they end up going to become the exact villain that they were fighting so hard against. After, like, signing with their soul that they would never do such a thing. It's like clockwork. And I need you guys to be prepared for that. For a world where they have to choose, hey, do I want to not be invited to family events? And do I want to not have access to family support? And do I want to have no friends in my real life, only on the internet? Just to continue to give a fuck about marginalized people that obviously, apparently, nobody does, because if anybody did, they'd probably have their rights. You know how fucking quick? Again, I keep on saying, they're going to put a red hat on top of that blue hair so damn fast. You don't understand. And it's going to be so fast, you're going to like be sitting in shock more than anything as to how this got over on you. More shocked than anything how they got over on you, rather than what you're going to do now that they've created this ridiculously like red-pilled raging reality that they won't have to face the consequences of, because not only their whiteness allows them a different level of significance and privilege in society, but they will submit to the Handmaid's Tale, because for them, more so than not, it's being sold into marriage and then just submitting to mainstream religion, rather than being sold into the underground sex slavery and sex trafficking market that inevitably happens beneath all of these traditional heteronormative ecosystems of marriage and like romance. And again, that's a conversation you guys don't want to admit, but we as a business person, the top of marriage culture, if the top side of the coin is marriage culture and having individual partners get together in a relationship, the bottom side of that same exact coin is sex trafficking and sex work. And it is exploited by, not only by the ultra poor who don't have enough wealth to sustain relationships, so more times than not, they think the only way they can access intimacy is by paying for it, but also the ultra wealthy who believe that they are so much higher, grander, and mightier than respecting and investing into a relationship that they transactionally pay for access to these gifts or that experience, making them feel like they're better than anybody because they can expedite the process to accessing intimacy, rather than just realizing they're basically still paying for sex like a poor person would do to a hooker. And that's why I keep on bringing up the conversation as it pertains to the well-being of sex workers, not just like, oh, OnlyFans girl this, like, but as like the well-being of sex workers and how that conversation needs to be had in a neoliberal or like a leftist thought space, because that exposes, and the existence of sex workers exposes the insecurity that so many patriarchal induced women have, because they fear that their husband is going to be at the mercy of these conniving, gypsy, devilish women who just open their legs all day, rather than that just being another human being who, again, they're not just out here throwing sex out. They also choose to engage in their experiences, whether there's money on the other end of that or not. The only difference is that you are an individualized person sex slave. These people are not owned by anybody other than a pimp, probably, but they also have a cut at their own money. As a wife of a husband, you don't have a guaranteed cut of their money. You're just underneath the mercy of making sure this person can be alive and hopefully function in society so you can get crumbs off whatever they're willing to provide. You see how important it is to have these kinds of conversations in a world that wants to make everything so damn taboo for no reason? Now, the final group of people that's going to get dehumanized, because we already described the economic slaves, we described the mommy maids, and now the next class will be, I believe, disabled people. And not just disabled like neurodivergent or disabled like Down syndrome. I'm saying disabled is an elderly. And we can even put, instead of just saying disabled, we're going to say the vulnerable class. Elderly, the youth, the disabled, and the unable to live independent. Not that that's a problem, but the inability to live independent underneath a hyper-individualistic system, especially one where everything is going to be privatized, it's going to absolutely ruin you. But those people, if not, and this is the thing that scares me about how they're going to treat disabled people, because they like saying a lot of mental illnesses and disabilities are like, oh, that's the devil speaking to you. We need to do an exorcism on you. But it's like, no, I just need like ADHD medication and like good sleep, and not to be overworking myself for underpay, because having a good place to stay, having a place to sleep, having food to eat, having network support, it's the type of support that money can't buy. It's the type of mental health accommodations that money can't buy. So if these, and again, a lot of you guys don't understand how bad American homelessness is, which I'll make a podcast episode on that. But American homelessness is basically like being a zoo animal in an open air prison. And this is coming from somebody who's experienced it. Like, it literally is like being a zoo animal in an open air prison where anybody is able to just like throw tomatoes at you. But instead of throwing tomatoes at you, it's just anybody can call the cops on you because your existence is making them afraid, rather than your existence is inspiring them to find a way to help you get a place to stay, so you aren't just literally, like figuratively, but naked on the street begging for somebody who probably is also poor to help you out of a situation that only a federal government, a welfare system, or like an actual collective can support you through. But we just like tipping culture, we put it upon everyday people to just have like walk around with $10,000 wads in their pockets, giving it to homeless people, and like it's going to change their lives, as if it's wealthy people who aren't creating these circumstances. Like the situation we gave with the private equity. Wealthy person comes in, finds a failing business, wants to extract all the last little bits of dollars out of it for personal gain. They end up doing it. They didn't realize that all the little elderly people that were working for that company just got thrown on their ass with nowhere else to go after that. And now look at these people, elderly and homeless and confused and scared and anxious and don't know what to do. And mind you, the person, the owner of the private equity company or the team, yeah, they maybe got like an extra $500,000, an extra $250,000. Like it's a sport to these people. It's not even to. It's a fucking sport, bro. And the final thing that I want to say that I didn't really want to get into too much, but I'm going to say it just as like a alleged theory as to what could happen, is disabled people are going to start being used once they're called like demonic by the church. Disabled people are going to start being used by these giant tech corporations as like biofuel to either directly train or to do human experiments on to create this artificial intelligence technology. Now, 100% sure. I made a video about a year and a half ago saying, or really 2 years, I think, to this point, that homeless people were going to be used in artificial intelligence experiments by wealthy people if we don't figure out like an issue for that or like a solution to that. And it only grows more and more apparent every single day. It's the same way that we have the most surveilled country probably on planet Earth, and kids still go missing every single day. The same reason why we have more empty beds than we have homeless people, and people are still homeless. There is an intention of having a demographic of people, which we're going to exacerbate over the next 5-10 years, a demographic of people that are seemingly not cared about by the people who are responsible for them, allowing whatever predator exists, whatever opportunistic predator exists, to take advantage of that situation for the sake of their own personal fetish or their own personal desires. And that's the world we're creating. Now there is no federal government. We're walking into a world where wealthy people can walk down the street and look at anybody. Literally, wealthy people can walk down any street like it's Figueroa Street. If you know what that is, put a bat in the chat for me. But the reason why I'm saying that is wealthy people have eliminated accountability. Like, accountability has just been removed from the cultural zeitgeist. And now that turns wealthy people from wealthy to godly. And I'm not saying that as like a righteous or like religious way. I'm saying that turns wealthy people into gods, because the only thing that separates us from this God master that you guys keep on believing in is accountability. Because God is perfect and there is no accountability to perfection. We are the flawed ones. So through their eyes. It's very similar to a lot of cult psychosis that I've been researching. But that's the reality we're creating. I hope you guys are ready for that. I'm not, obviously, but hopefully you guys are ready for that. And as all of that is going down and you just see just nastiness go down, it's, well, if they just complied, if they just submitted to the cultural psychosis, they wouldn't be in that predicament. They wouldn't be in that situation. Again, you're gonna see peers. You're gonna see people that you went to political rallies with. Blue hair, put the red cap on. That might be the title of my first like album. If I make a little album, it's gonna be like an EP. It's gonna have 3 songs on it, and it's gonna be called "Blue Hair with the Red Cap." But this is collectively, it's a point to make sure that there is nobody, one, to dissent against the government, as the government is again removing all the blockages from being able to take full advantage of the 18 to 35-year-old white male in America, and to leverage their ignorance and their insecurity to fuel this new generation of American empire. But it's also so they can sell out so many of their own peers and have that sellout be validated by legislation. By the time it comes time to be sold out themselves, there's nothing to protect them either. It's not even just people anymore. It's them allowing the legislation that is going to dehumanize them at some point to be allowed into office. And now the only thing that matters is not if they get hit by it, it's when they get hit by it. And when they get hit by it, there's going to be nobody to fucking help them. And really, what the fuck would you do with all of this wealth, all of this power, but you're not investing it into the American people? Like, what's going on? Oh, because you get to invest it into your little billionaire pet projects. Mark Zuckerberg gets to take taxpayer money and invest it in the metaverse. That's going to bomb. And I hope it makes him a freaking broke. Elon Musk is going to invest in all of his little blowing up Starlink starships, and he's going to try to take people to Mars. When's the last ship that actually didn't blow up, Elon? Oh, my bad. He just keeps selling new dreams to stop us from seeing that he's a fucking liar who can't tell the truth, because as long as he tells a new lie that sounds better than the last one, we're never ever going to catch his track. Swipe or no swipey. But the nail in the coffin to this whole entire situation, if you even want to call it that, because again, I told you in the beginning of this, the battle was won for these true American patriots. The battle was won by dehumanizing all of their cultural opposition. Now the war is lost, because this is the end. This is the last bit of power they will ever get to hang on to. Because just like we've been doing for the rest of American history, we will be forced with, how can I say this in a way that's not mean? We will be forced to live through the American experience behind the eyes of the white men who now don't understand what accountability is, and won't ever have to understand what it is, because even if they did get faced with it, they'll just project responsibility onto somebody who had no power, because that makes sense. This is why you don't let stupid people have a bunch of power. But the final nail in the coffin that will allow this country to just be perfectly solidified into the hands of whatever foreign oligarchs are allowing this shit to happen, because this is so much grander than the United States. This is so much more intense than just, oh, the United States, like the wealthy people in the United States hate their poor people. If you understand how the economy works, especially the global economy, there are entities, multinational entities, that just glide around with their money into 6 different countries and fuck up the political system, trash the economy, and just act like they own shit. Billionaires love doing that. Love doing that. Go to places that don't need any bit of their existence and try to turn themselves into freaking Christopher Columbus. But the final nail in the coffin, I don't know how many times I've said that. I apologize. I just like saying that phrase. It's going to be shaking hands with those white dudes that you said, hey, we just dehumanized all these people over here. So look, you can be happy again. But then realizing that those boys have been so, I was going to say deluded, but, oh, no, that's the right word. Those boys have been so deluded by digital psychosis and not having access to the real world and these internet incel cults that cannot be applied into the real world to do anything other than trauma bond and maybe circle jerk with the bros, that we don't want them in our country if they're not going to fully comply and submit. So what are we going to do with these brute animals? Oh, let's go send them to war. Let's go send these people who can't read and write and hate women and don't do anything but jerk off and talk shit on playing video games all day. How about we send them to war to go terrorize somebody else's country, somebody else's homeland, somebody else's women and children and community for the sake of American exceptionalism? How about? So that's definitely going to happen. Like, it's the reason why that, like, it's, you guys don't see this type of stuff because it's all like one of the steps will happen and then it takes 6 weeks for the next step. And then it takes 5 years for the next step because things have to be put into position, fully put into position. But as somebody who, again, thinks about patterns and understands the systems on a macro scale, I'm watching you guys get set up to get head punted into oblivion. So your body is going to be rotting in America and you're going to be thinking ideas and thoughts in Russia. That's how crazy this is about to be. But again, I'm kind of losing myself here. So to just finish this off on a smooth note, I'll explain to you why it's important to send the American middle class to war. Because, or not the American middle class, but the American male incel class, if you even want to call them that. Because once you remove them, that's the final roadblock to owning America. Because now you've dehumanized everybody who you don't want to be called an American. You've sent out all the Americans that were too stupid to participate in turning America into this tech revolution or this tech industrial revolution superpower of the new world. And then you reject everybody who doesn't submit to the religious psychosis that we're now merging with the state, because the founding fathers definitely said merging church and state was going to be the best thing we could ever do. And what do you do after that? Oh, shit. This is a good time to sell citizenship, because you know how many people are not going to make it back from that war, especially a war that we never had to be in the first place, and especially a war that we've entered in right after abandoning every single one of our allies. So it seems like we're the not finish the word. But more importantly, the American, we're talking about a population issue. We're about to destroy the population when we go to this war stuff. But more importantly, when you deplete the American active adult population that much, you need money, and you need bodies, and you need active business. 2 types of ways we can import that. We're going to sell citizenship for $5 million because we can then, quote unquote, assure that only the desirable people will enter our country. I think this is kind of a little bit of a means of turning America into Dubai, but that's a conversation that we're going to have to end up having probably towards like the end of the year as more stuff gets kicked off. But the top end is get wealthy people to buy American citizenship. And not like when you have $5 million to spend like that. I apologize, but you probably have another $5 million. And with that, you can run a business. With that, you can own property. With that, you can buy land. With that, you can buy slaves. Forgive me. Health insurance. But understand, the $5 million mark, it's not just, it's so expensive to get into this country. It's we want a certain type of person in this country, and we need your money as an investment into the future of America. That's what it is. It's $5 million gold cards. It's selling stock into the corporation that is America. Now, how are you going to sustain that stock? Because again, most of these people are crypto scammers. They're Nepo babies. They don't understand how to run businesses. They don't understand how to run industry or do anything other than make money and spend it on girls who don't want them and impressing guys who are never going to accept them. You bring in H-1B visa replacements, because it's interesting how Elon has such an issue with immigration until it's importing people like him, Europeans, into this country, and if not Europeans, Indians and Asians that are the token marginalized STEM people that fall right beneath those white Europeans to now enter in the American economy. And not only will they enter in the American economy for the state of reinforcing white supremacy and perpetuating white supremacy, but they will also be integrated into the economy for the sake of being in such a disadvantaged position from where they came from, but with so much passion and ambition that they will basically supersede the current average American middle class person so much so by working so much more for a lot less pay, for a lot longer time, and a lot further projected career span. It'll damn near eliminate 30% of the American labor force from this own country. This is why we have to do so much to dehumanize people before we tell them, hey, we're not selling your jobs to robots and artificial intelligence. We're giving off your jobs to immigrants, but not the immigrants that we were going to convince you were stealing them. Immigrants that we chose to be here to literally replace you real Americans. Because in closed doors, behind all this Doge shit, we talk about how stupid Americans are to let foreign nationals come into this country and take over our government. We talk about how stupid Americans are to let their own neighbors be dehumanized by rich people who have cared nothing about American politics since ever. We talk about how stupid Americans are to believe into shit like racism, bro, when there's things like wealth inequality that are actively happening, when there are things like the femicide that are actually happening, dehumanizing women every single day, when there's things like what the fuck, bro? And I'm telling you, these wealthy people, they're only buddy-buddy with you guys on Fox News. They're only buddy-buddy with you on the Joe Rogans and all that because you're stupid. And as long as you're stupid, you're willing to support. And as long as you're willing to support, you got a friend in them. But the second you wake your ass up from this world that they're creating for all of us to live in and truly be enslaved to, you're not going to be so much of a friend to big guy. And I hope you guys understand it's a lot deeper than simply punishing poor people, if you even want to call it that. This is a means of transforming America in the image of, if you even want to call it this, like from the failed ashes of what Nazi Germany was. This is what Elon Musk desires to turn, and Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin desire to turn America into, and then protecting the inception of that with the depleted state of the American economy and the protecting itself with the military force, and then creating more of this AI integrated military force. So there's absolutely zero dissent and mass surveillance so far through the system that we're basically living under 1984 in 2025. Only if they showed up a year earlier. But I guess the election was in 2024, right? Aldous Huxley, you're an animal for that shit. That's all I'm going to say. But truly, that concludes our episode, and it only does because I would keep yapping to you guys, but I think I'm going to get kicked out of the library right now because I've overstayed my welcome, and I just saw some people absolutely pointing at me and clowning me for hanging in here too long. So I think it's my time to go. But I'll conclude this video or this podcast. I don't know. Let me think about what I'm going to say. With all of this being said, I believe that those tech CEOs that all should be, Zuckerberg should be in prison. But most of these tech CEOs, I believe that they saw this as an opportunity to become trillionaires. Either write their name in history by doing so much good for the world that has never been done good for, or by doing so much damage and destruction to the world. The only reason why anybody knew them in history or knows them in history is because of how destructive and villainous they are and how they basically destroyed America. But it'd be confusing as to like how that would be written in a history that they also control. So like even if they fail, it'll just be like point a finger at a black. All right. Well, if I was an oligarch, that's how I would take over America, honestly. That's how I'd, and we actually, let me conclude this episode by saying this. Once you bring these boys back in from war, it doesn't even matter if you lose or not. Once you bring them back in for war, if you lose the war, you become an isolationist state and America gets set back for like 70 years. If you win the war, then you bring back in these boys into a America they can be comfortable with, because hopefully it's going to be dominated by white people and everybody else will be like stuffed in a basement working on like AI data centers. You have the mass religious resurgence that comes and just blindsides all of America and allows America to see, hey, that last 10 years that we've just spent showing you that we're the devil and this is like the new Nazi Germany. Yeah, fuck you. And no. And then somehow we will all just collectively submit into this Christian church and then allow wealthy people to do what they do to society while being so hopeless and just giving up so much that we're waiting for an existential colonizer to come and save us after we've already sold our souls through our living experience. Like that'll always confuse me. How much, like, do you think poor people and wealthy people pray for the same thing? Do you think they even pray to the same God? Do you think their God answers the same way? Maybe that's the question I wanted to finish this thing off with. Like, what God do wealthy people pray to other than their own money and status? And hopefully that allows us to see that the destruction that's about to take place in America, it's going to be so much worse than you could ever imagine, but at least you know now. That's probably the most important thing you could do for yourselves. And until I catch you guys next time, stay up, bro. Stay educating yourself. Stay stacking bread. Stay mobile. Stay in healthy relationships. If that person's treating you like shit, you get the fuck out of there as soon as possible. And stay rebellious, bro. Stay taking care of your soul and actualizing that calling whenever you get an opportunity to do so. Because I'm telling you, bro, so few people really get an opportunity to do that, bro, and make that shit crank. Let you be that person. I appreciate you for sitting and taking all this time to absorb these conversations and these concepts with me. It's a beautiful feeling, I tell you. Used to feel very lonely having these ideas, not knowing that I'm the person that's supposed to share them, not the person that's supposed to wait on somebody else to like dig them out of me. So, again, my gratitude, my appreciation, my thanks for everything that you guys do and all the support that you continue to show me on this journey that I continue to be on. Again, do not, the one thing we can, not again, but the final thing that we can say with this video is your hope or your hopelessness will be the most important factors as to your perception of reality for the next 5 years and your ability to make decisions in alignment with your optimal well-being over the rest of your life. So let's make sure we're staying calm, we're staying grounded, but we're staying informed. We're staying active, we're staying connected. Because the whole entire world is changing, bro. And if the only thing in this shit that you can keep is your soul, you might as well be cultivating that with everything you got. Stay crazy, stay rebellious, stay dangerous, stay horny. If you think I'm cute, you want to have sex. Instagram. I'll catch you guys later. Rock on.